Good evening, comedy fans. Welcome to another episode of What's So Funny. I'm your host, Guy McPherson. Our guest this week is Glen Foster, that Canadian guy. You know, the one from Canada. Yeah, Glen Foster's been doing comedy. Whew, he was a trailblazer, coming out west when there was no comedy. We were a dour lot. Nobody laughed in this country until Glenn and a few other comics started things off. That's probably not historically accurate, but it's close. I bet you it's real close. We talk about the early days with Glenn. He's been doing stand-up 35 years, he says. Professionally for 31. Yeah, he was in town and went to his hotel room and talked. We've done this a few times now. The first episode is lost somewhere in the ether. But the second one's available. You go listen to that one and then listen to this one. It always gets political with Glen Foster. He is a political animal. But that's not all we talked about. We also talked about comedy. You'd expect something like that. It was a good conversation, and I bet you like it. So listen. I mean, that's what you're doing now. I assume you're not just going to turn it off after I'm done talking. So I'll just stop talking and we can get on with the show, okay? Here is me and Glen Foster. We were in the middle of a conversation when we started recording.
We'll pretend that we start that conversation up again in a few minutes. We won't. Maybe we'll slide away from that conversation and go into the hi, how are yous?
Who knows?
And, who knows how
it's
this
been a
will
few
turn
years
out.
since we've had you on the show, since you've been to town, in fact.
It's been a crazy long time since I've been here.
When were you here last?
Well, when did the Yucks open in its new location?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost 5 years, I bet you.
Really?
Yeah.
So welcome back to the West Coast.
Good to be back.
You know, a year or two ago, I had on Ron Vaudry.
Oh, yeah. He's living out here again now.
Yeah, on and off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about the first Yuck Yucks tour out west, and you were on that tour,
He
right?
likes to talk about that tour.
Well, I love to hear it, too. Because,
Yes, I was on that tour.
You guys were like explorers coming to the Wild West.
We were the founding pioneers, I guess you could say.
It was you, Ron, and...
Me, Ron, Evan Carter, and Larry Horowitz.
Oh, yeah, and Breslin.
And Breslin, of course, yeah.
Yeah, the 1982, was it?
82, yeah.
How many years had you been doing comedy at that point?
Oh, boy, less than 5, for sure. I mean, my very first evening at the Improv was 1982. Tony Curtis was the host. Yeah.
Yeah, they always had big celebrity hosts.
Big celebrities in the early days. I mean, you'll get bigger than Tony Curtis, right? And I went way over time. I was standing on stage, went way over time. Tony Curtis stood behind me. I was so clueless. Tony Curtis stood behind me, put his hand over my shoulder. And I still was clueless as that I was still trying to wrap up my last bit type thing rather than realize, geez, I guess I probably should get off at this point. But it just didn't even...
Did you see, did that make it to TV? They had cut it down, I bet.
I can't remember exactly. I think that might have made it to TV. It might have. I can't remember.
I watched a bunch of Evening at the Improvs not too long ago.
I have it on a VHS tape somewhere. And
it's online. You can only get it from a U.S. streaming thing. Yeah, you can't get it in Canada.
Of course not. You can't get anything in Canada.
And I watched a whole bunch of old ones, and some seemed really edited down.
Yeah.
So you weren't the only one to go long, I'm sure.
Yo, probably not.
How long were you supposed to do, and how long did you do?
Oh, I think I was supposed to do 6 to 8, and I probably did 10 to 12.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know.
But you were young.
I was young, really young, ridiculously young.
Who else was on that show?
I think, was it Alan Havey?
Oh, yeah. He was here recently.
Or it might have been, oh, geez, I can't remember his name right. I'm so bad with names lately. Damn it. No, can't remember. But he's not super well known outside of comedy circles, but he is well known in comedy circles. And
well, that's a guy like Alan Havey, too.
It's like
that
Alan, but not. You would know the name for sure if I could think of it, but...
I will Google
because
it.
I'm, senior now.
Not quite.
Just all slipping away.
Not quite.
I am. I'm senior according to Shoppers Drug Mart.
Oh yeah. What does that get you?
55 gets you 20% off regular prices one Thursday a month or something like that.
So not a lot.
55. How sad is that? Senior now. 55.
Freedom 55.
Freedom 55. Yeah. Freedom 95 in this business.
Are you you feeling a lot of freedom in your business?
No.
What.
Yes, I'm feeling a bit of freedom in the. I got my first "You're too old to work at our club" letter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which club do you want to say?
I don't. Well, who cares? Rumors, Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are they run by a real young person?
Younger than me, I guess they say.
Well,
that
who isn't?
Well, exactly. Thank you. No, but he basically said, "Look, our market is younger, and I know older guys that are still working at that club, so maybe it's personal. Who knows?"
Yeah, how do you take that? Would you rather it be personal or rather it be about your age?
I don't know. That's a tough one, eh?
Yeah, because young people can only see other young people.
Well, I sort of understand a little bit because, I mean, when I was a young comic, I really didn't have a whole lot of tolerance for older comics.
Yeah, but when you were starting out,
here's the thing.
It was a newer game.
Yeah, but you see, there's always been respect for people who are in the game a long time and are well known, like, but lesser known older comics. But the thing is, too, I think in general, people going to any kind of entertainment, unless it is someone who is well known, famous, they know what they're going for. I think on stage they want to see someone who is plus or minus 10 years their age, maybe.
You think?
Yeah, just as a general comfort level, I think.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Again, unless it's someone who's really famous. Older musicians, that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Well, I was talking years ago with Norm Macdonald about this, and he loves old people. and we were talking about this.
Well, he's the colonel now.
We were talking, that's right, or he was, I think. The shows that we watched as kids, and they all starred really old people, and we didn't care. We were kids. We were watching Barnaby Jones,
right?
with a 90-year-old Buddy Ebsen.
Yep.
The Odd Couple, two middle-aged men.
Yeah,
I don't know how old they were.
Everything's skewing younger now.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like 22-year-olds.
Well, I think I think for a while marketers have known that once people get to a certain age, they're not buying anything new. And, you got to get them while they're young, and that's why all the money, all the marketing, all the energy is directed at youth, because we have to sway them and make their decisions while they're young, because when people get to, the senior years...
They have everything.
Or they don't want anything, or they're so set in their ways that they're not going to try a new beer or a new this or a new anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Comedy, though, club comedy... Theater comedy, you're not going out to buy something else other than who you're seeing on stage.
Right, and that's why I say if you know who you're seeing, but going into a comedy club is different. You don't always know who you're going in to see.
Right.
But
then you can flip those expectations.
You can. I'm not saying that I can't do the job or that older comics can't do the job.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying sometimes there's an immediate prejudice.
Right.
Is my dad doing comedy? In fact, I've even opened with that. Here's what's going through the room right now. Hey, dude, I didn't know your dad did comedy.
And Erwin Barker used to have something about like he felt like the dad coming down to the
rec room or something.
Yeah, that's
like that.
it.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but all in comedy too, experience means a lot because it's generally considered the longer you are at it, the better you get.
Yeah, I think so. But there's also the law of diminishing returns kicks in.
Explain.
Well, that when you're starting out, you're generating new material. You're generating a lot of new material. You're trying out all kinds of new things. The older
you're
you
excited
get,
to be in it.
Excited to be in it. And, the further along in the game you get, the harder it is to generate that new 5-10 minutes of material, whatever. One of my father's favorite things to discuss was the law of diminishing returns.
What business was he in?
He was an engineer.
And did that apply to him?
Well, it applies to everything, really. I mean, it mostly applies to manufacturing, right? It becomes cheaper. If you're producing 1 unit, it costs so much. If you're producing 2 units, it costs less because you can spread the cost of production over the 2 units, so on and so forth, until you reach a point where it costs incrementally more to make 1 more unit, and that is called the law of diminishing returns. It's like say you're a workout guy and you work out to get to a certain level of fitness. Well, you reach a certain level of fitness, and then it's so much harder to lose that extra pound or that extra right. So
learning a new language.
It takes a new language, whatever. It just takes so much more energy to get that extra little bit out. That's what it is.
So you're working on a new bit now that is edgy.
Oh, very.
Very edgy. And, this could be coming from, well, would it be coming from a much younger comic? Or are they too into the
I think it could easily come from a much younger comic, because the things I'm talking about within this bit and the impetus behind this bit is not so much to do the bit, but it's a backlash against the backlash of political correctness and social justice warriors and safe spaces and all this nonsense, right?
Safe spaces are nonsense?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they are, because there's been such an emphasis over the last few years about, and it's fueled by the government, and it's fueled by their human rights commissions and this sort of righting wrongs type thing, and the whole thing of it is that it's mostly based on mental anguish. Oh, someone told a joke about me and I'm suffering now, And I don't want to downplay mental anguish, because it does exist. I mean, PTSD, battle scarring, that it does exist. But it's a far cry from, being on a battlefield to someone told a joke about me and now I should go to the government and they should help me, ruin this person's life, basically. And that's what they do. I mean, the minute the human rights commissions come after you, you have to lawyer up, and it can ruin people instantly, because they come at you with the full power and weight and financial resources of the government. They don't give a shit.
Yeah, but, albino rhino beer is very offensive.
Really? Really? That's the biggest thing we have to worry about?
That was a couple of years ago at the Human Rights Commission.
But it again, nuts. I really think the case is that, there's racism, there's prejudice in this country, but I don't think it's anywhere near the levels that it used to be. And I think these human rights commissions, like anything else, seemed like a good idea at the time, but I think that there's just so little of the... I would either abolish them completely, or, and I may run on this, I may actually run for office one day, and my sole stance...
MP?
Whatever.
Okay.
MP, MPP. My sole stance will be the abolition or severe curtailment of the purview of the human rights commissions, because I really think it's, there aren't enough... There's real prejudice. I didn't get an apartment. I didn't get a job. I didn't get, because of my race, my religion, whatever. That's real prejudice. Not I made a joke about somebody. This guy in, is it Montreal? Mike Ward, who made an admittedly awful joke about...
a kid.
The kid, exactly.
Who is severely disabled?
Something like that. Yeah, it's a horrible joke, okay? But does that mean the government should come along, Look what's going on in Europe. There's a German comedian who made fun of the Turkish prime minister, okay? And there is a law in Germany that dates back to like Kaiser Wilhelm or something like that says you cannot make fun of a foreign dignitary.
Really?
Right. And Angela Merkel, because she needs to make a deal with Turkey right now on the Syrian refugee crisis, is letting this prosecution go ahead on 100-something-year-old bullshit law.
And this is a comedian.
A comedian who could face jail time. His name is John something or other. I can't remember his name. And his jokes were awful. I mean, the things he said about the Turkish prime minister, horrible, awful things.
Well,
but
are
they're
you
just
saying
words.
the jokes themselves were bad, or the opinions he was trying to get across were
I don't
bad?
think he was really trying to express opinions. I mean, he was saying all kinds of horrible, that the guy was...
That's crux, isn't it? So many people think jokes are necessarily the same as opinions. Sometimes there's crossover, sometimes there isn't.
Sometimes there isn't, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, whatever happened to the sticks and stones?
Well,
right?
That's how we grew up.
Yeah.
But these days,
No. What's happened
like
now
that.
is there's such a government emphasis on what should offend us that we get offended, and we're looking for offense. People are looking for offense. It's an industry.
Why don't you explain sticks and stones to our younger listeners?
Do any young people listen to this podcast? Or
no, they'll see your name and
that's
they'll go,
right.
"That's
That's the Shoppers Drug Mart podcast. We don't need to listen
you
to
could
that.
be a spokesman for Shoppers.
On
Drug
Thursdays,
Mart.
I certainly could be, or on the one Thursday a month, or however. I don't even know. I just accidentally happen to bump into it once in a while.
Yeah, that saying was
so the sticks
was
and
drilled
stones
into
will
our
break
heads.
my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's what it was. So basically, people can say whatever they want to you, however, quote, hurtful or whatever it is. In the end, it's just words.
Yeah, and that was a way for you to be able to get past that.
Right.
To help you to go, oh, those are just words. That person's
exactly.
stupid.
If I make a joke about someone, no matter how horrible the joke or about whatever topic, how horrible it is, it's still just a joke. It's still just words. It's not, I'm not beating them over the head. I'm not, stabbing them. Right?
Yeah.
There's no physical damage. And again, I go back to the PTSD thing, and that is real and does exist for some people, but it doesn't exist for a lot of these people who are just crying that somebody insulted me.
Well, some people would say that that kind of hurt lasts maybe a lifetime, whereas physical hurt will heal, or else you'll walk around with a limp maybe the rest of your life.
There's different levels of that too, right?
True. Yeah, and then it goes back to, how do we know what this individual feels?
Right.
We can't. So we have to take them at their word.
We should give them thousands upon thousands of dollars.
I guess,
We should ruin other people's lives.
The problem is that it's open to misuse because somebody could fake that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's totally open to misuse. And the biggest reason it's open to misuse is all of these commissions and everything else are appointed. They're appointed. There's no controlling it. There's no voting for these people. I don't even know how you would get rid of them, because it was all done through like a special order in council or whatever the hell they call. I don't even know. Yeah, I'm running for something and I don't even know the damn law.
Here's your problem when you're running, or even just trying to explain, is when you say mental anguish is a real thing. But I'm not talking about that.
Some mental anguish is a real thing.
That's what I meant, yeah.
But we are experiencing around the world now heightened levels of mental anguish,
right?
Because it's rewarded.
So here's your problem, is that you have real sympathy for what you consider real mental anguish, real prejudice.
Yes.
And when you come off saying that mental anguish, the accusation of mental anguish by this person is nonsense, and it makes it sound like you're dismissing all mental anguish. And so you have
but I'm not.
I know you're not. So you have to listen carefully. And a lot of people would just think that, he's a heartless bastard. Because you have to come at it from the aggressive, this is ridiculous standpoint, even though you do have actual sympathy for prejudice and mental anguish. The real deal.
The real deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little tricky, don't you think?
Well, it is. I mean, everything is tricky. I mean, simple ideas are easiest to convey, and that's why difficult ideas are hard to get done.
Mm-hmm. But that's your job.
Keep it simple, stupid. That's the old advertising formula.
Yeah, you're an old advertising man.
I am.
Right.
I could have been a Don Draper by now.
You can always go back to it.
Minus the chicks and the huge expense account.
So you might...
And the drinking at 3 p.m. Well, actually, we did that.
Yeah. You are listening to What's So Funny on CFRO, Vancouver Cooperative Radio, 100.5 FM. I am Guy McPherson. Our guest this week is Glen Foster.
I don't know. They say we should do this. They say take public. I love how they say we should make more public transit. Nobody wants public transit, okay? I don't want it. You don't want. Even the people who are on public transit don't want to be on public transit because the public is on public transit. You can't compete with a car. There's no comparison. Let's look at the schedule. It's leaving right fucking now. And it's coming back at a convenient time, too. Look at that. Where we want to go is right on the route. No one ever gets into their own car and goes, oh, thank God I got a seat. I thought I was going to have to stand the whole way. You know, they come up with these ideas and they don't back them up at all. You know, the hydrogen economy. Remember the hydrogen? Oh, yeah, we're going to burn hydrogen because it burns clean. All it leaves is a little bit of water. Not enough water to put out the fire. The hydrogen economy from the people who brought you the Hindenburg. Hey, these people are charred and damp. I see these idiots now won't even put out their cigarette while they're filling up their car. I'll be damned if I'm going to the hydrogen filling station. I'll be going to the full-serve hydrogen, the one where you sit in a bunker 20 blocks away while some guy drives your car for you, huh? Some guy who, I don't know, maybe was a doctor or an engineer in his own country, right? But... oh, we're testing the water here. We are testing the water. Moving slowly into the... You have to be so careful these days because we're so indoctrinated as a society as to what should offend us now. We draw lines and go, well, that's not funny. That's offensive. No! It's funny and offensive. So fuck off. That's funny and offensive too.
You might run for office someday.
It's a thought.
Every day you inch towards.
I don't. Here's the thing. I have the passion. I have I think the sensibilities, but I don't think I have the skill set. I'm not the most organized. I think I could get the job. I just don't think I could do the job. Right?
That happens a lot.
And that happens a lot, exactly. Gee, when's that happened in the last few months in Canada?
Well, you need to, you have a staff there who'll help you out.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think it would be an enormous amount of organization required, and that is definitely not. I am the weak link in my own organization sometimes.
Would you run as an independent or under a party?
I think what I would like to see is what I call Independence Day. And that is, we all vote for an independent on the same day and toss all the parties on their ass on the same day and all their corporate connections on the same day. Independence across the board, as it should be. End the party.
No parties.
No parties.
An
independent should represent the people in their own constituency, and that's it. No parties. Imagine that. If on one day, we voted independence across the board. I should have run in the last election because it was such a dump Harper vote for anybody kind of thing. I think I could have got in. I think I could have taken advantage of that.
Who got in your riding?
Liberal, of course.
Yeah. And you were pro Harper.
No, I wasn't. I was
so
pro.
You come across as pro Harper.
I come across as a lot more conservative than I really am. I'm much more centrist.
Yeah.
On a lot of things, and even left-leaning semi-communist on a lot of things. It's certainly socialist on a lot of things, but I guess my reputation exceeds me because of some of the material I do or whatever. I come across as, right-wing, pro-conservative, but
that's that tricky walk that I'm talking about.
It is, and it's Harper's fault that Trudeau got in, okay? Because I think some of his financial policies were solid, and I think some of his world affairs, I'm using the wrong damn word here, I'm sure, foreign affairs policies were solid. I just got tired of all the secrecy and the nonsense, and I was tired of seeing the millions of dollars spent on commercials the action plan. I even did a bit about it at the time. I was doing a bit of. I've started this new thing that I call government-style comedy, and that's where I don't actually tell any jokes. I just take out a bunch of ads to tell you how funny I am.
There's some comics that do that.
Use your money to do it. It's what's going on all over the world now, and especially in Canada. All this, and I know I'm a former advertising guy, but this is bordering on propaganda. The governments don't do anything anymore. When they say, "Oh, we need to clean up the environment," do they clean up the environment? No. What they do is they do a commercial to say, "Hey, look at what a great job we're doing cleaning up the environment." There's a commercial running in Ontario right now about all the billions of dollars they're going to invest in infrastructure and how they're going to do this and they're going to do that. No, what you're doing is you're spending millions of dollars on advertising. If you're doing such a great job, you wouldn't have to tell us what a great job you're doing. And that's what they do. They don't do anything. Now the plan is, well, we don't have to do anything as long as people believe that we're doing something.
Well, they must be doing something, though.
I don't think they are. And I also, in our particular province, in Ontario, they have wasted billions. And that's why they have to now, raise taxes. And here's a good one for you. We didn't use enough electricity, apparently, because we had a mild winter. We didn't use enough electricity. After millions of dollars in ad campaigns about saving electricity and turning off your lights and using electricity at non-peak hours, we didn't use enough. So now the price is going up.
Wait, that makes no sense.
It makes no sense, exactly. The only way it makes sense is if the whole system is corrupt, and it is.
You got a surplus of energy.
No, not a surplus of energy. We just didn't use enough of it at the time. You see, we've committed to wind turbines and solar power, and we've guaranteed these investors a certain profit. Who gets that? Only people who deal with governments. Only friends of government. That's who gets those deals. No one else gets guaranteed profits.
This is all over my head, Glen Foster.
I'm sorry.
You said that Harper had some good policies.
I thought he had some good fiscal policies.
I think every party has some good policies.
Perhaps.
They all do.
They all have some good policies.
So you got to pick and choose. And you go, well, I think this is more important than that. I like this. I don't like that. Unless you're a real, we see these people on Facebook and we assume that they're just party line. Their party can do no wrong.
Right.
And that's in all of the parties.
Right. And all the parties are doing wrong. Every one of them.
Yes, and they're all doing some right, too, but nobody will give an inch to anyone else.
True enough. Yeah. There's very little cooperation and consensus. The same problem that's going on in the United States all the time. They're in deadlock all the time, and nothing ever gets done because they don't want to cooperate with the president. The president doesn't want to cooperate with the Congress.
It's a team game.
I guess.
He's on the other team. I don't want to deal with him.
And that's stupid because it's not helping anybody.
No. So you get into politics ideally to help the people.
Right.
And then it's just a game.
But then the game becomes keep power at all costs. Get power at all costs. Keep power at all costs.
Yeah. And you're not a fan of current Prime Minister Trudeau?
No.
You were a fan of his father?
No. I was when I was a kid because I was a victim of the propaganda machine. It was a propaganda machine. It's a propaganda machine now.
He was one of the greats.
I don't think so. I think he did irreparable damage to this country. When you look back at it, he spent far more money than anyone ever spent. He put us into huge deficit. He started all the nonsense with Quebec and their special this and their special that. I think he did huge damage to this country. I think he was just a flamboyant playboy. I have less and less respect for him as the years go on.
Well, if you read the experts, apparently that was just in the last 4 years, from 80 to 84. And his first 68 to 79, I think, was very good financially. And much better.
Was it good financially? Because that was when a lot of the spending was done, wasn't it?
No,
a lot. Because up until
again,
then,
this is over my head.
Up until then, and it's over my head too. I don't totally have my facts. Good
so
thing
listen to us talking.
Good thing this is a comedy podcast and not. Well, it's become very unfunny. It's very unfunny. If I was listening to this, I don't know if I'd listen to this.
But you're not listening to this, so
That's
you're
right.
okay.
I'm not really listening to what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, Pierre. No. I think he did well. And so you look at Justin and
when you look at the whole the human rights, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Right.
Well, as soon as you codify something like that, see, laws are meant to replace common sense. You know what I mean? If there's a law, then there's no interpretation. There's no, it could be this way, or individuals could be judged one way or the other. No, there's a law, so this is how it is now. The Official Languages Act, which is just utter nonsense, and it's led to the complete Frenchification of the armed forces, of the government. I mean, it is very, very hard to get a job in government if you don't speak French, and it is, I think, much easier for people who speak French to learn English than it is for English people to learn French.
Why is that?
Because we're surrounded by English all the time, right?
I see. Yeah, but, we're one country with two languages, and so anything in the federal government...
No, we're not one country with two languages. We're one country where, 10% of the country speak the other language? 10%? It's nuts. It's crazy. And French is a dying language in France, okay? The only reason it's... Yeah.
What's replacing it?
Everything. French is dying out.
Is it?
Across the world.
Yeah. Well, I think most languages
are. Who speaks French?
I think
French and a couple dictatorships in Africa, maybe. Oh, and the other dictatorship in Canada.
Yeah. And you play Montreal a lot.
Not very often. Less and less.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Just for laughs. When was the last time you did that?
I actually did it a couple years ago.
There you go. You don't talk about this though. French is a dying language.
No, I haven't said that on stage per se, but it is. Right? I mean, people say, "Oh, we should have two." Sure, let's have other languages, but let's not be bringing up kids in French. The only reason French is of any value in Canada is because it's government mandated, and you cannot get a government job unless you speak French. And it is ridiculous that someone should have to speak French to get a government job in Alberta. It is ridiculous.
So here's that trickiness that you're faced with here, because when you
let's
say
learn
that...
Mandarin, let's learn Farsi, let's learn Russian, for God's sake.
Well, learning any other language is good for your brain.
But, okay, where I live in Oakville, okay, there is a huge push to get kids into French immersion. French immersion is just, let's get our kids into French immersion. Mm-hmm. And they think it's because they're going to get a better education, but it's not. The reason the French immersion schools have better numbers than other schools is because they don't have to take the special ed kids, and they don't have to take the ESL kids, and they don't. So it's fixed, and every parent thinks their kid is going to be the next prime minister, and it's if it wasn't for the fact that we subsidize Quebec and can't do enough to kiss their ass, French would have died out in Canada a long time ago. So
this sounds like you're angry at the French.
I'm not.
But exactly. So this is that trickiness again that we talked about.
I'm angry at the government, as always. Various governments.
And you want to be part of that government.
Yeah, sadly.
That would be great, though. You should. You'd be the Al Franken of Canada.
Perhaps.
One day.
One day.
But Justin Trudeau, I think we're all happy that he's in.
Are we?
Aren't we?
I think he is...
Well, you know what?
I think he's our Ronald Reagan. I think he's a figurehead. He's an actor.
Well, who isn't though? That's the thing. I'm with you that when he was running, I thought, well, this kid, he's not a kid. He's in his 40s.
Well,
but this guy,
he's not pulling the strings. Okay, he's not pulling the strings any more than any other politician really is pulling the strings. So I really can't blame him for that. But I do blame people for falling all over themselves over this guy, because he really is a failed drama teacher, essentially.
I don't think he was failed.
Well, no, he was this accomplished drama teacher.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Didn't do much else.
There's nothing wrong with it. No, he was a doorman.
Yeah,
in Whistler,
snowboard instructor. Yeah,
what's wrong? Those are honest
all
jobs.
All the wonderful things you want.
Those are honest jobs.
Yeah.
What about a stand-up comedian? Now, if you get elected and then you take the country by storm and you become
supreme despot,
leader of the Independence Party.
Okay, leader of the non-party.
He was a stand-up comic,
right?
But you have opinions. You have
that's true,
right? So anybody can, no matter what they do for a living.
All right, I'll give you that one.
Okay, So, yeah, as for him being a figurehead, and if you say Ronald Reagan was a figurehead, well, as long as the country gets behind them,
right,
then it doesn't really matter.
Well, it kind of matters.
He's inspiring a nation.
Yeah, but he might be inspiring us down the wrong road.
Well, sure. Any leader.
That's the
could
danger
do
of having
Any
a charismatic leader.
So you should have somebody with no personality.
Well, we had that.
Yeah, we did.
People rejected it.
And you said that Justin Trudeau was in because of Harper, and likewise Harper was in because of who was the last
of Chrétien.
Liberal?
No,
was it Chrétien?
Harper succeeded in uniting the right. That was his main accomplishment, and I think a lot of people on the right felt that the party was hijacked by the reformers. The old Conservative Party was hijacked by the reformers, and there's always been some uneasiness about that particular merge. But it had to be done. It had to be done, or the Liberals would rule forever.
And they still might.
And they may still. And if they think that Kevin O'Leary is going to be the great saving grace, the guy has a 32% rating within the Conservative Party. Yeah. Oh, he's a great candidate if you want to see a Liberal dynasty for the next 40 years.
He's charismatic.
I think he gets a lot of attention because he's rich.
And outspoken.
I don't know if he's so charismatic.
And outspoken, yeah.
A lot of people think he's an asshole. So is that charisma?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But it's fun. It's fun to watch. Play the game. Cheer for a team.
It's fun to watch if it didn't, cost so much money.
Well, what's it costing you, Glenn?
What's it costing me?
Yeah.
Well, when we start pricing carbon, okay, which will do nothing, absolutely nothing to reduce carbon emissions, especially when China is building a new coal-fired plant like every 4 hours or something. It does no good at all for Canada to be reducing our emissions if someone is not reducing theirs. All it's going to do is create a slush fund to push money from supposedly carbon pricing to wherever. It's just another tax grab. It won't do a damn thing to reduce emissions. It's like it's buying the right to pollute is what it is. They're selling the right to pollute. And no, they're not even selling. This is the stupid part. If you were selling the right to pollute, that would be one thing, and it might actually discourage people from polluting. But what they're doing is they're giving these huge corporations the right to pollute so that they can sell that right to pollute to other corporations. Well, the way it should be done is sell carbon credits to give carbon credits to every single person in Canada and let us decide who we want to pollute. And they can buy our carbon credits, and we can make some money off it instead of actually paying money. Just like in Ontario right now, they're selling Hydro One. They're selling Hydro. Ontario Hydro is being sold. I think it's called Hydro One now, but it's being sold. Okay, it's the only thing that's making money. And yet because they've wasted billions, they're going to sell it off to private interests, right? Well, what they should have done then, if they're going to create shares and put it on the market and on the private market, is they should have given shares to every single person in Ontario who has helped pay for this. And then again, we can sell our shares on the open market to whoever we want to. But instead, it's being sold in an almost private situation to basically friends of the Liberal government.
This is the Liberal government like BC has a Liberal government,
yes,
where it's in name only. It's really a Conservative party.
I don't even know what you could call them. They should all be in jail from the top down. And our previous premier should definitely, and I don't mean jail. Jail is temporary. Prison is where they should be.
That's permanent, is it?
Well, it's more permanent than jail. Jail is where you go when you're waiting to decide if they're sending you to prison.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's all over my head, Glenn. All over my head.
You're regretting this podcast already, aren't you?
No, because I'm here to sell you on the glory that is our leader.
Okay.
Our dear leader.
Dear leader, exactly. I wonder sometimes if North Korea's PR people are working for our prime minister too, and how long it'll be till he shoots a perfect game in golf. Or
come on now.
It's true.
Come on.
True.
Hey, and Trudeau had a lot more going for him than Kim Jong-un. You got to give him that.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Okay. But, I just looked up.
But I don't know how good a drama teacher is Kim Jong-un.
There's nothing wrong with drama teachers. I just went to a high school play the other day. It was fantastic. I have nothing but respect for somebody who could corral these kids and get them to perform.
Fair enough.
All right.
Actually, I really like my daughter's drama teacher.
See?
He's a good guy.
There you go.
Would I want him running the country? I don't know.
How does he feel? Like he must Google you or follow you online somewhere and see that you're talking about a drama teacher.
I don't know if he see. Well, actually, no. What was the joke? I tweeted. I tweet now. Yeah. If you want to follow me, it's at Foster Funny.
Okay.
And if you don't want to follow me, it's still at Foster Funny.
No matter what.
No matter what. So what I tweeted the other day was I take back everything I say about Justin Trudeau. He really is a good drama teacher. Oh, man. Is the economy getting a little better? I don't know about you guys, man. I got one of these pre-declined credit cards in the mail. Comes cut up in the envelope, huh? That is harsh. That is mean of the bank, really, I thought. Oh, man. We used to get pre-approved credit. That's how all the trouble started. That's how we ended up bailing out the banks. Bailing out the banks. Yeah, because God knows it's hard to make money as a bank, isn't it? Oh, there's so many rules. Get this. You're only allowed to charge somebody $2 to take their own fucking money out of their own fucking account. Well, how do you stay in business? Huh? I wonder every day. $25 service charge to me if someone writes me a bad check. Well, geez, if this is the way you operate, I can't believe you haven't run into trouble before now, If only the system were somehow more tilted in the bank's favor, perhaps. If only maybe they could borrow interest at a borrow interest. Maybe they could borrow money at a much lower rate of interest than they loan it to you. If only they had vast real estate holdings to fall back on in these tough times. Credit is the problem. See, when you pay cash for something, right? You reach into your wallet, you take out the money, it's physical, it's tangible, it's in your hand. There's no connection. With credit, there's nothing. It's just like, I'm Credit Ninja. Feel my buying power. You know what credit card, when you use a credit card, you know what it should be like? It should be like a taser. Okay, all right. The 60-inch TV is off the table, then. Okay, I'm going to go walk around the parking lot and come back and try for the 46, I think, at this point. Woo. Credit, man. See, cash, right? You reach into your wallet, you watch it. You have all that time to watch the money as you're handing it over. That seems like a lot for one dance. Oh, I didn't know there's a lot of guys here sitting with women. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. These other guys are assholes laughing at that joke. I don't even know what it's about, frankly.
You are listening to What's So Funny on CFRO, Vancouver Cooperative Radio, 100.5 FM. I am Guy McPherson. Our guest this week is Glen Foster. So here, I just Googled some changes Trudeau has implemented.
Okay.
When was the election?
You came prepared.
Well, but these are I'm really surfacey here. Okay, so here in Vancouver, he reopened the Kitsilano Coast Guard.
Okay.
That was big. Harper shut it down. Uh-huh. And then there was a oil leak in the English Bay.
But that's one of the reasons I would vote against Harper, because that's an environmental policy. Now, it probably was a fiscal policy, let's save money. But these are not the places we should be saving money. So, right. Yeah, okay, he deserves a little applause for that.
Okay, one for Trudeau there. And
again, probably not even his idea.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
He acknowledges climate change and global warming, which the Harper government never did.
Well,
they wouldn't even
that's
utter
another
the
reason.
word.
That's another reason, and the muzzling of scientists.
Yeah.
And everything.
That was the worst. For me, that was the worst.
During the Harper regime, actually, I had a good friend in Ottawa who was in climate science. He's a climate scientist. And I asked him about all this global warming. And you know what he said? He said, there, we put one joke in. We got one joke in our whole podcast.
He has a more open government, and the tone is more people-friendly. That's got to be good for our psyches.
I think it's perception.
I don't know about that, because another thing is the press conferences. Harper never had them. In fact, he didn't use the press conference room for 9 years.
That's true. He wasn't as good a performer.
And during the election, they had candidates who wouldn't even speak to the press, and he himself would allow one journalist.
Which was idiotic and part of why he lost the election.
Exactly. All right. So far, Trudeau's winning. What about allowing in the Syrian refugees?
I'm of mixed minds about that, because there is a lot of controversy about who exactly these refugees are, and I know for a fact that we do not have the resources to vet 20 people, let alone 25,000 people. I know that they can't keep track of people now that they're worried about, let alone and 25,000 won't be the final number. And there's all kinds of controversy around that, even about where they're actually putting some of these refugees. The refugees aren't happy where they're being put. People are being displaced to put refugees in. Look at, not to be political about the Fort McMurray situation, but hey, we can spend $1 billion something on refugees, and when it comes to the Fort McMurray, we'll match any funds.
Well, did you hear that the Syrian refugees are helping?
I did hear that.
Fort McMurray,
and
Isn't
that's
that
fantastic.
Great?
That's a wonderful.
They're giving back.
Great.
So you're
again,
somewhere in the middle there.
I'm somewhere in the middle on it.
Okay.
Yes. I'm not saying let's not bring anyone in, but let's just be a little more careful. And I don't think we're being careful at all.
They are introducing doctor-assisted suicide, I believe.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Okay. And is that a good thing if they do?
I'm of two minds on that as well, because I don't think people should have to suffer if they want to end their own life. On the other hand, it could, as they say, go down the slippery slope of the slippery slope. I'm having trouble saying the slippery slope. We could go down the slippery slip. I can't even say it. I can't even say slippery slope. We're moving down a path towards, I guess, euthanasia. I guess. Oh well, Dad's old. Maybe we should convince him to. Right.
It's hitting close to home.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, that's right. Catch you on the way out of Shoppers Drug Mart. While you're here for your 20% off.
He doubled the federal
20% off doctor-assisted suicide on the last Thursday of it.
He doubled the federal contribution to the Canada Council to the Arts.
Okay, well, what kind of asshole would I be if I said that? But you know what? I won't see a nickel of that. But it's good, though. It's not good. It's not good. I always think that art should pay its own way. It should, right?
Ideally, maybe,
because he's going to double the funding, and it's going to go to the same CBC crap that gets produced all the time. It's going to go to the same people who are on CBC all the time. What I call the CBC Entertainment Senate, and by that I mean do one thing and you're appointed for life.
Speaking of the CBC, he reinvested in the CBC. Harper was going to sell it off.
Yeah, well,
you'd be okay with that?
It's a bit of bite the hand. I mean, would I be where I am without the CBC? Tough to say, but I disagree with a lot of the things that the CBC does, and a lot of their programming, let's face it, nobody watches.
Oh, I'm thinking radio, but...
Oh, radio? Is it? But radio has always been...
I think it's all the same, radio and TV.
But it's not all the same. Apparently, radio gets a way, way bigger audience.
If Harper had sold off the CBC, I would imagine that would apply to both radio and
as
TV.
well. I don't know if they'd find too many buyers, because radio is such a far-flung thing, and CBC radio in particular, and all the different languages that they cover and all the different areas that they cover. I mean, it pretty much has to be a government project, and it is good for the country to have that unification, But again,
that's right. And
I disagree with some of the stuff that's,
Well, you disagree with private stuff too.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, you're on the debaters a lot.
That is true. Yeah.
Do you argue? Have they ever debated the CBC?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you?
I did. I debated the relevance of the CBC in the CBC building. my opening line was, I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to commit career suicide in spectacular fashion. But it was one of my favorite debaters' jokes on that was that my closer on the debaters on that particular episode of Is the CBC Relevance? Yes, I know we all grew up with fond stories of watching the CBC. But I think if you recall, every one of those stories started the same way. When I was growing up, we only had one channel.
Who were you debating?
Oh, it was Patrick McKenna.
Okay.
Speaking of the CBC Senate.
Oh, really? So anyway, Justin Trudeau. There's more, but we're not going to get into it. Let's go back to...
We've been on Justin Trudeau a lot.
I know. I want to get him on this show.
We really haven't been on comedy a lot. We've been really on politics and other things.
But you know what? You talk about politics in your act.
Well, I do, and yet I'm sort of trying to move away from it.
Because you don't want to be pigeonholed?
It's partly that, and it's partly that people don't give a shit. I mean, there's a couple, just not necessarily politics, but topical material in general. For one thing, people don't follow it. A lot of people just don't follow the news at all.
You're
anymore.
Looking at one right now,
right? So, no, that's not true. But if you do a joke about the news and they're not following the news, then you're the one that looks like an idiot. And the other thing, of course, is that you could have a great joke about something that happened in the news, and a week later it's useless. Yeah. So you constantly have to be writing new jokes.
And we know you don't want to be doing that.
And we know we don't want to be doing that. And so I always say, for me, do you know what the hardest part for me about doing jokes about the news is?
What?
I have to watch the news.
Yeah.
But I partly feel like I wonder sometimes, am I doing my job? Am I doing my job? If people come to comedy to sort of, forget about their problems and have a good laugh, and I'm on stage talking about ISIS and all the horrible things that are going on in the world, am I helping, or am I just reminding them of all the shit they came in to get away from?
Right.
But
there's always been a role for those kind of comedians. Social commentators.
Again, though, if you know what you're going in for.
Oh, okay.
Right? If you're just walking into a comedy club, I will never know. I will never know now, because my experience with comedy was so early, and it was so on the ground floor of comedy clubs in Canada in general. I will never know what it's like to walk into a comedy club not knowing what I know about comedy. Like, just to walk in as a patron, someone who, let's go to a comedy club.
Right.
I have no idea what that person's expectations are, I sometimes wonder, what do people really think they're going to see when they go to a comedy club?
Yeah,
especially the ones who are offended by language or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, what did you think you were going to see? Did you think you were going to see Bob Hope? Like what did you think you were going into?
I think comedy now is even, I mean, maybe you could tell me from your 30 years doing it.
35.
35. Is
31 professionally. It was my 30th anniversary professionally last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's gone through peaks and valleys. Don't you think right now it's almost more popular than it's been in many years?
I think to some degree it is, and perhaps the internet has contributed to that. And certainly the game has changed from the internet point. I mean, the tools exist now to basically make yourself famous. Right? I mean, all this instant connect, not necessarily instant connection, but being able to connect individually with fans, with people who like your work, whatever. If you can build enough of that, then, you can do things that just weren't possible 20, 30 years ago. You just couldn't build those, certainly not at the reduced cost. I mean, the cost of being famous has dropped dramatically. Right.
You don't need to hire a PR firm.
But the problem is there's a billion people trying to do the exact same thing that you are, right? So even though it's easier technically, it's a lot harder numbers-wise, because there's just so much out there of everything. And when you do comedy, when you try to say you try to do an independent comedy show in a city anywhere, well, this is why I try to stay away from big cities, because you're not just competing with other comedy, You're competing with the Blue Jays and the Raptors and the opera and the, you know what I mean?
Like so much entertainment.
And comedy is such, for all the emphasis that's placed on comedy and everyone, the big comedy stars and everything else, comedy is still a very, very small slice of the entertainment pie.
Right. So what made me think of that was when you say you don't know what people are thinking when they go into a comedy club now, because of the internet, because of podcasts, and you hear comedians talking to each other and talking about hecklers and how inappropriate that is. People have more of a knowledge of what to expect and how to act.
I mean, it's a lot different now going to some small town somewhere than it was 30 years ago when you just walked in and they hadn't ever seen anyone do stand-up comedy, or if they did, it was, on the Tonight Show.
Yeah, they saw Norm Crosby on Dean Martin.
Exactly. So there's a much higher awareness of the whole thing.
So going back to...
And in fact, I've actually heard some people say, if I'm going to a comedy club, I will look at the name, I will Google the name, I will try to see if I can see a YouTube clip or whatever, right?
Yeah. They're doing their research.
Right? Because, it's their hard-earned $10 or $15 that they...
Yeah.
Or 20 on weekends or whatever.
You are listening to What's So Funny on CFRO, Vancouver Cooperative Radio, 100.5 FM. I am Guy McPherson. Our guest this week is Glen Foster.
I had virtually no sleep the night before I flew because I'm an idiot and I don't know what it is. But, I've been traveling for well over 30 years now. You'd think I'd have it down. But at 4 o'clock in the morning, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning when I got to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I still am pissing away the time to a 7:35. I got up with so much time. I had so much time. I'm like, well, I have so much time. And I end up like running on the plane, like the last guy on the plane almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, too much time.
Too much time, exactly. Yeah, because I'm scattered in ADD, and I sit there and agonize over what suitcase I'm going to...
It's that organization. You're the weak link in your organization.
I am totally the weak link in the organization.
But going back to your tour in 1982 across Canada, out west, when there weren't comedy clubs all across Canada, and you were going into places where people had no idea what to expect.
Yeah. And I was fairly new too.
Yeah,
right?
You were.
Yeah, I was.
But
new
how
to
exciting
it
was that?
Oh, it was great. It was a very cool thing.
And how were you received? I mean, the tour in general, maybe your act in...
I really don't remember. I really don't have a lot of memories about a lot of things.
Why is that, Glenn?
I don't know, honestly. And
I thought it was drugs.
Well, I could say possibly, but the thing is, there are people who have done way more drugs than me who have amazing memories. I might be some frontal lobe damage, taking a few hits to the head when I was a kid. I don't know. But
did you get in fights?
No, but I definitely hit a tree at one point, tobogganing, and I've whacked my noggin a few times. But I don't even think it's that. I really have a very poor first person memory. I barely remember my childhood. I barely remember my first marriage. I barely remember. I really have not terrible memories, a terrible memory.
You remember your act, though. That's
on a good night.
On a good night.
Yeah. I mean, when people go, wow, how do you remember all that? I always reply, well, that's what I remembered tonight.
You have lots more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 30 years worth, right?
That's
and yet
right.
Every time I hit the stage, I'm like, what am I going to do tonight? Unless I'm on a tour and you start out kind of loose, and as you go along, you get tighter and tighter, and you by the end of a week or so, you're kind of locked into a certain pattern of doing it. Mm-hmm. But then if you have another couple weeks off, the next time you hit the stage, it's like, well, how does this go again? And
so, do you have memories of your act when you were young? Now you have some on VHS, as you said.
I have so much video. I could start my own television channel if it's all still intact. I have high 8 tapes. I have 8mm tapes prior to that. I have VHS from 82. I think the earliest piece of tape I have on myself is 1985 or something. No, it was 82 is Evening at the Improv. But
right.
I'm sure there might be something previous to that I have just like community television or something like that, right?
Do you, when you look back at those, if you do you cringe or do you go, yeah, I was pretty good?
I think I mostly cringe.
Do you?
Not cringe necessarily, but even if I look back at something I've done 3 months ago, then I'm very hard on myself in that respect, because I'll look back and I'll go, well, I wouldn't show that to anybody now because I'm doing that particular bit way better.
That's true. I mean, we think of
there's an evolution.
The model with Louis C.K. of turning over his material every year.
Yeah, that's really hard to do.
It's really hard to do, and also he can, and maybe you take the Seinfeld model where you will keep a bit for years and years and years, and you just tinker with it here and there.
Oh, totally.
And so somebody who's not really listening,
if you saw my act a year ago, and you saw it now, you'd see a lot of similarities. But it wouldn't be exactly the same.
Right, but we might just go, he's doing that bit again.
He's doing that bit again. Exactly. Right. Yeah. You might, if you saw my act 20 years ago, there are some things that I'm still doing.
Right. But the subtleties are different. And they may work much better now.
And again, the thing I showed you, but the thing I've been doing since about the 90s about Canadians writing letters now has a whole other twist on it.
Yes, it does.
Right? Things evolve.
That's a good twist.
It's funny, too, because I will do a bit a certain way for a really long time, and then all of a sudden one day I'm like, hey, I bet I could do this. And it's the same bit, but just different wording, different whatever, and it has a whole new life to it all of a sudden, you know?
So what now 30-odd years into your career, what advice would you give young Glenn, who was touring across Canada in 1982?
I would say, young Glenn, stay in the States.
You were in the States?
I was in the States for 11 months in 1984. I lived in L.A. in 1984 for 11 months. And it was very difficult because I wasn't there legally, so I wasn't allowed to work. And so I was basically just eating up savings. And I wasn't getting great spots or anything. I was going on in the belly room of the Comedy Store at 1 o'clock in the morning for 5 people. Mm-hmm. You know, so it was a fairly soul-destroying experience. I think I became a lot darker in my comedy when I got back from L.A. for sure. But it might have also had something to do with my father died a year later, and that was a kind of a big dark as well. But I should have gone to the States a long time ago. I should have, tried to crack that market more than I did. I think I was a victim of maybe a bit too much success in Canada, where it became like, well, I don't really want to make that sacrifice. I don't want to start all over again type thing. Plus, at the heart, I am Canadian. I mean, I can be funny anywhere, but I'm funnier here, because I understand.
Although you would have evolved differently.
I would have evolved differently, perhaps. Yeah, exactly. And I think, too, I might have left just as things were really starting to heat up in the but then you never know, right? I mean, there's people who stay there for years and nothing ever happens.
Well, I think of guys like Jeremy Hotz, John Wing, who have lived down there for 20-odd years,
right.
And yet it seems like, I could be way off on this, but it seems like they have most of their success still in Canada.
You'd have to ask them.
Yeah, because I know they do, Jeremy does, theater tours here. Sure. He probably doesn't do that in the States.
I don't know.
So you would have stayed in
I would
the
have.
States.
I think I would have stayed.
You came back because
I came back because I had a girlfriend, fiance who basically waited the whole time while I was in the States, and there was sort of that pressure to come home, and also the pressure of not being able to work. Like I could work, but I couldn't really get paid, or if I got paid, it had to be under the table or whatever. So there was nothing I could really do above board, and at the time, it seems a lot easier now. A lot more people seem to be getting their papers and everything else a lot easier than at the time. So it was just a huge... And it's still unfair. It's still completely unfair. I mean, if an American comic wants to work in Canada, all they have to do is find someone who wants to book them, pay a fee at the border, and they're in. If a Canadian wants to work in the United States, you have to go through immigration, like a formal immigration process. You have to have a sponsor down there. You have to have someone who says, yeah, I'm going to give this guy like a year's worth of work, or, and you have to get a lawyer involved, and it's like a $5,000 U.S. operation, right? And if it's only going to be for a weekend or something, who wants to bother with that? I mean, it costs almost as much to do for a year as it does to do for 1 or 2 shows. Mm-hmm. So it's a financial hurdle to overcome. right?
Because we're a threat. Canadians are funnier.
I guess that's what it might be, whatever. But it's partly because America never plays fair.
Well, I guess they don't have to.
They don't have to.
Everyone wants to go there.
They don't have to. But I'm talking about their foreign policies and everything else. You know, they they don't play fair.
Back onto the politics.
Back onto the politics.
You see?
Yeah, it seems.
You say you want to move away from that on stage.
Minus the Christian craziness. My favorite historical figure is Oliver Cromwell.
Oh yeah, why?
Because he beheaded the king.
Oh.
He brought in the Magna Carta.
See, I didn't know that. But so who was he?
Oliver Cromwell?
Don't look at me like I'm an idiot, because I am.
Okay, well, Oliver Cromwell basically was a revolutionary at the time of, is it King James or something? And it was kind of like an American Revolution, but on British soil. It was the beginning of the Magna Carta, which is the rights of the people to not be ruled by. It was the beginning of the monarchy as a more of a figurehead thing than an absolute power.
You're right.
You're right. Yeah.
He was an English military and political leader.
Yes.
And later, Lord Protector of the Commonwealth
That's right.
of England,
yeah,
Scotland, and Ireland.
Right.
Okay, so I'm just going to edit out that part. History. Never enjoyed the history.
Funnily enough, I was never really a huge history buff either.
Yeah.
But I definitely enjoyed that story.
But so now you want to behead a leader, is what you're saying. That's what I took away from that.
You take away from that, I want to behead a leader. Figuratively.
Okay.
Figuratively.
Yeah, sure.
I'm an anti-elitist.
You're a man of the people.
I like to think so. Although I'm not really. This is why I think that, people like Trudeau, they're completely, for them to say they're a man of the people is ridiculous, because he's lived a life of privilege and so on and so forth, as have I at a certain level, nowhere near the Trudeau level. But for me to be able to say I'm a man of the people is ridiculous. I can't relate with people who are struggling at a given socioeconomic level in Canada. I think I could relate more than Trudeau or,
I don't
a lot
know.
of these other politicians.
He was a doorman and a drama teacher. He could relate. Yeah. And he went to UBC.
Uh-huh. And?
Well, I mean, that's not an Ivy League school or something. Like
well,
Mulrooney's kid went to Duke or something like that.
Yeah, and look how much he's doing with it.
Yeah. He's talking to celebrities.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not a fan of his either, by the way.
Of the son or the father? Yeah.
Yeah, don't know much about the son, really.
Except for that he interviews
definitely not a fan of the father. I think that.
No, when you said here we are back on Trudeau and Harper. When you said Harper united the right, he didn't unite the faction that was Joe Clark and Mulroney,
that's right. They were the old line conservatives and
who are more centrist.
I believe so.
Yeah, and so they didn't like Harper.
Right.
Okay,
back to that again.
Hey, you brought him up. So comedy too, like, I guess if you look back at an old clip of yours and cringe, like, you might like the jokes, but if you look at everything,
and a lot of times,
comedy the style has changed too.
And a lot of times I'll look back at stuff and I'll go, holy crap, why am I not doing that joke? That's a great joke.
Because you've forgotten
and
about
I forgot it. Yeah, and I'll add it back in.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem with doing topical humor, is that it does have that shelf life. But sometimes, I mean, we go in cycles. You can go, well, this pertains to another.
I don't know what percentage of my material would be topical per se, but I think it's smaller than you think. Mm-hmm. And again, it's because it keeps turning over. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of topical. I wouldn't say a lot of but I do topical material, when it strikes me, type thing. But overall, I think my act is not topical. It's more observational
and talking not about politics specifically, but as a social critic kind of thing.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. And even that, I'm somewhat wandering away from to some degree. Because I guess what it is that kind of social critique, quasi-political stuff. That's the stuff that gets me fired up, and to me that. If you're fired up, is stronger material.
Yeah.
But then sometimes maybe people just want to hear, what's the deal with washing machine,
I've often wondered what the deal with washing machines
Well, you know what
was.
I'm saying, though.
Yes,
right?
I know.
That it's
Yeah,
just
but
innocuous, and something can be funny without being, hard-hitting.
Yeah, well, Lewis Black, there's a guy who gets fired up, and it's all really current stuff that he's talking
that's true.
about.
Yeah.
And he brings in
And a lot of
crowd.
times, and I love Lewis Black, but a lot of times he's more fired up than funny, right?
I would not disagree with that.
You know?
Yeah, because now he has to be fired up, so he manufactures the rage.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Glenn, we have gone overtime, but that's okay.
Way overtime.
Well, not way overtime.
Not way overtime?
No, just a little
okay.
overtime.
I don't know how long these things normally are. Well, when it's a podcast, there's really, you don't have to, fit in between
exactly
2 commercial breaks or whatever else you have.
Exactly.
You can just,
We're also on the radio, but we can...
You can finagle a little. You can take a few extra minutes.
Are you still doing the Comedy Aces?
I would like to do more of that, but the place that it started out basically because Paul Smith died. He was a comic and
sports writer Doug Smith's brother.
Yeah, and so we went to Paul Smith's memorial, and it ended up being held at a place called the Pilot in Toronto, which was around the corner from the original Yuck Yucks location in Yorkville in Toronto, and it was the place where we hung out. Because you really couldn't hang out at Yuck Yucks. There wasn't any, social life bar there kind of thing. So we would hang out at this place called the Pilot. And so when we were there for the memorial, we were upstairs. They have an upstairs room. And I was like, this is why is no one doing comedy here? But it turned out to be the reason no one's doing comedy is because what they want for the room, it's financial suicide. It's not big enough to have any kind of room to make money. So I did a couple shows there, and those were fun shows, but financially unsustainable.
And the concept of the shows?
Oh, the concept of the show was basically there was nobody on the show with less than 20 years in the business, and in most cases 25, 30 years. We had some shows where we easily had, well over 100 years of stand-up on one stage.
And what was the audience like?
They were older group too, right? People who had grown up seeing some of these comics. The people I was aiming for was the people who used to go to comedy clubs and hadn't been in years. And I would like to do more of that kind of show, but it's a tough thing to put together, and it's a tough people at that level have either made it or dropped out. They made it huge, or they dropped out a long time ago. Don't do it anymore. So there's a number of guys who are my age and my level, let's say, but not a lot of them. So it's hard to put together a show like that.
I could see a tour.
You could see a tour.
Everything is themed now.
Yeah,
it's thematic, and the Comedy Aces. These are just veterans who really know what they're doing.
I was trying to find a word. If you know the Pilot at all, it's a pilot themed bar. It's a aircraft themed bar, and so it just kind of all popped into my head in one creative moment. This whole Comedy Aces with the poster. I don't know if you saw did you see the poster?
Yeah, in a plane,
in a plane, and it looks like a kind of a boys' adventure series. It's done in that kind of artistic style. The guy who did the artwork was fantastic. I thought it was a great concept, and it could do well, but then. The other thing you have to think about is when you're bringing that many people with that level of experience, it becomes a huge logistics nightmare, as well as a compensation nightmare, because all these guys need to get a certain amount of coin, and then the ticket price has to reflect that, and and then there's hotel rooms and everything else. So
without sharing a room at that
without
age.
Big sponsorship behind you, it's tough to pull off, right? But the 3 shows that I did, I thought were fairly well received.
If only you had better organizational skills, you could.
If only. I wish someone else was doing all this, and because I have to do everything myself. Because I'm in a weird place. I'm not big enough that someone's going to get behind me like a Just for Laughs or whatever and do a national tour like a Jeremy Hotz, that sort of thing. But I'm just a little too big for the clubs because I've got a certain amount of TV credits and fan base and everything else. So, I really should be trying to do more independent stuff, which I am trying to do. but it's again a huge logistics nightmare,
Right.
and nobody buys a theater show anymore. They rent the theater to you and then charge you to sell their tickets.
Well, I know Derek Edwards and Ron James make cross-Canada tours
Sure they
in
do.
smaller theaters.
Yeah, and I actually had approached that agent, and it's actually somewhat of a funny story. I sent him a DVD years ago, and I didn't hear anything back, nothing at all. And I finally contacted him about 3 months later. I said, I didn't hear anything back on this. He goes, oh, yeah. Well, I watched your DVD, and I didn't really find it all that funny. And then had some friends over, and for some reason your name came up, and we put in the DVD again, and my friends were laughing, and I guess I was laughing a bit. And I guess what it comes down to is I'm the kind of Canadian you're making fun of. Oh, so that's a reason not to book me then, that we had a personal disagreement. But again, with the technology, here's an interesting... Oh, I should have mentioned this, actually, and I will mention it now. A few years back, I did a show that was shot that was supposed to be a DVD. It was called Prickly. It was done at the Rose Theatre in Brampton, and it was meant to be a DVD, and there was a massive server crash, and they lost all the video footage. Like, the video was gone. The only thing that remained was the audio.
And it was good audio.
The audio was great, so I put it together as a CD, which I'd been selling for a couple of years. And even that, I actually have never pressed a single commercial CD of that CD. It's all downloads. I
So you sell a download card.
I'll sell a download card. This is a download sticker, actually.
Yeah.
Right?
CD baby, yeah.
Yeah. So now what happened was a few months ago, the producer got in touch with me and said they had found a backup copy of some of this footage. Now, the problem is there's not enough different camera angles to make it viable as a commercial DVD, but there's quite enough to put it together as a video download. And there's a couple new companies now that are very much like that basically you can set up on your own website, you can set up a pay-per-view or a video download site like Louis C.K. did. And I love what Louis C.K. did, but what I really don't like what he did was he set the price at $5.
I hear that from other comedians.
$5 for a full 90-minute, And that's great if you're Louis C.K. and have millions of fans, and here's where the
diminishing
returns exactly comes in again. Is that okay? Great if you're Louis C.K. and you can spread the production costs over your million sales or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're only going to sell a few hundred, a few thousand, $5 isn't going to. But
so what do? You got to keep it at $5.
I haven't figured it out yet because it costs so much just to put it on these sites, right? Like they charge so much just to set up the downloadability and everything else, right? So it'll likely be 10, but I think that's reasonable.
Sure,
because downloading
Canadian money too.
That's Canadian money. So look for that on my website. I'm trying to do more smaller. Like I've given up on the theater idea now. Because the risk is it's just and everyone is so last minute about everything. Like the risk and the heartache and everything else is just so much that it makes more sense now that I'm trying to do smaller stuff, smaller, less risk, more traditional comedy type rooms, not necessarily comedy clubs, but bars, restaurants, places with more of a cabaret type, club type atmosphere. For example, when I was coming out here to do Yuck Yucks, I basically put a thing on Facebook. I said, I'm coming out to Vancouver. I've got 4 nights off in between. Where should I do a show? And this one lady got back to me, said, well, I'd really be great if you could do a show in Merritt. So well, where the hell's Merritt? So I looked up where Merritt is. Happens to be fairly close to Abbotsford, which is where I'm ending my little trip here.
Yeah, there's a new Yuck Yucks in Abbotsford.
There's a new Yuck Yucks in Abbotsford, exactly. So I through this woman who's just a Facebook fan. You know, she doesn't own a bar or anything. I said, well, where is the place where they normally do shows in town? And she told me the place. I got in touch with that person. So now I'm doing a show in Merritt.
That's great.
It's great. And I would like to do more of that sort of thing, right? Because, I mean, what I do have going for me is fans. I have fans. The curse and the blessing of Canadian showbiz is that everything I've ever done is repeated forever and ever on the Comedy Network. All the, 8 Just for Laughs, 2 Comedy Nows, 5 Winnipeg festivals, Halifax, everything. So people do know who I am. I just have to figure out a way to connect with them. A friend of mine once told me, if people know you're in some small town, whatever, you should be able to pull 100, 200 people, no problem, if they know about it. It's just making that connection. So that's what I'm working on now, trying to do, more smaller stuff.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you. If people went to my website, thatcanadianguy.com, and joined my mailing list,
that would help.
Be very helpful. Tell me where you want the show.
Thatcanadianguy.com. Glen Foster. Thank you very much. With podcasts and co-op radio shows, timing isn't so important.
That's true.
But what is very important is my parking.
Oh.
And it's expiring in 8 minutes.
Oh, shit. Well,
so
we best get you going then.
Thanks so much, Glenn.
Okay.
There you go. Why don't you go to thatcanadianguy.com, get on his mailing list. He would appreciate it a lot. And while you're at it, go download his CD. We heard some of it. It's very, very funny. You should hear the rest of it. So go to CD Baby, go to iTunes, go to wherever you go. I mean, Google it. You know how to do that. I don't need to walk you through it. You'll find it. Glen Foster, thanks for talking again. And you listeners, thank you for listening. Do listen again, won't you? Next week, we've got clips, highlights from the year 2015. There are some good ones, real good ones. Next 2 weeks, I think we're going to do that. There's so many of them. All right. Thanks. Good night.